Crimson Red is officially back in the World Heavyweight Championship picture. Taylor Hell is a fucking badass, and the new Northern Lights officially have some closure. I'm Zach Hardy with the Wrestle Target, and this is USW Brimstone 2018 in a nutshell. Obviously, Friday Night Severity, Soul branded pay-per-view. We're now done with this. That's kind of harsh. It was a fun show. It was a really fun show. I'm not going to say that it wasn't. I'm not going to say it was any less than fun. It was a really enjoyable show. I think it was very, 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 very stable. I think it was, from start to finish, I think it was a very consistent card. I think it had great matches. I think it had good matches. I think there was a bit of story told. And now we're on the road to Bulletproof with both brands. So Bulletproof season is in full swing. We got a month until we head down to Baltimore. So that should be fun. Brimstone, I think, at the end of the day, will be a pay-per-view we look at fondly. I don't think there was any real weak point on the card as a whole. I don't think there was many points in time in which I could look at something on the card and note it as a real low point, other than I think one match on the pre-show. But aside from that, it was a really solid show. And it was a really enjoyable show. So, without further ado, let's get into it. Pre-show, obviously we're going to start with that as I adjust my crotch. Pre-show match number 1, Austin Atomic and Mika Jordan team up to face the Painter Brothers Association. This was the one match that I told you a couple of seconds or minutes ago that I think was the one real weak point of the show as a whole. It doesn't really screw up it doesn't really screw up much of the show as a whole for me, and I don't think it really screwed up the show at all. I don't think it set it off any sort of track. I don't think it kept it from accomplishing its goal. It was the pre-show match, probably the one match on the card that I think we'd care about the absolute least. I mean, obviously there's some character development for Austin Atomic and Mika Jordan, but at the same time, I don't think the Painter Brothers Association has much left to offer other than maybe 3 or 4 different name changes, and what the fuck was that? Other than 3 or 4 different name changes, and well, it was just kind of a low point, or at least it was not the greatest way to start out the pre-show. Though I assume that if you had the 2 matches, this would be the one that you would want to put on first. There was not much to it. Painter Brothers Association kind of ruled the match for the most part. Austin Atomic and Mika Jordan definitely trying to find their groove as a tag team. I think that's very evident. Painter Brothers Association, or I'll just call them PBA for short, took control of the majority of the match until Austin Atomic and Mika Jordan started fighting back, obviously eventually gaining up the upper hand and picking up the victory. So Austin Atomic and Mika Jordan pick up the victory. Not much more to this match. PBA had their usual kind of, break down your opponents until they have an epic comeback and eventually knock and topple you off of your pedestal kind of moment. There was nothing really of note here. It was not a match that I would go back and watch in my free time, so I would give it 2.25 stars. And that's really being generous. It's just kind of like a normal, basic main roster WWE tag team match. And that's about as best as I can put it. So, yeah. We'll get into the next kind of thing, which is a promo, as the ring men in their locker room start cutting a promo on Jack Ramsey and Austin Cole and their match with them later tonight, or later that night, for the World Tag Team Championships. Not much other than the fact that they kind of staked their claim as they are aiming to walk out either the World Tag Team Champions or the clear face of the Tag Team Championship Challenger window. So, yeah. We get into match 2, which is Washington versus Kevin Storm. Now, this was a match that I think was kind of up in the air, because they've been trying to do something with Washington, and it would make sense for Kevin Storm, now that he's officially on Severity, to win his first Severity pay-per-view match. I picked Kevin Storm to win, or at least I'm pretty sure I did. But a lot of people kind of went either way. Washington ended up picking up this victory with the Monument, a very surprising victory. I think it definitely threw Kevin Storm for a whirl. Um, but I think now looking back at it, especially seeing Washington pick up the victory over Kevin Storm, I think it kind of makes a bit of sense. I think Washington now gets this momentum that he can start rolling with. He can start picking up this program with Kevin Storm and making it mean a lot. And with that, I think Kevin Storm now gets this little dot on his character's record of understanding the fact that he can hop over the Severity brand and not just waltz into a feud with somebody and expect to come out the victor because he's had more main event experience than the other. So it makes sense overall, and I think it gives more of a purpose for a second match to happen. And I'd be looking forward to it if it happened again. This match was obviously one of the slower matches, or on the slower side of the scale. I give it 3 stars. I don't think they were given too much time. Granted, this was a half-hour-long pre-show, so you didn't get very much. And I think they only got like 10 to 12 minutes or something like that. So obviously they don't get the full allotted time to kind of show off their expertise, but nevertheless, I digress from the time. It was a fair match for the time that they were given. I think they utilized it well. I think they added in the things that they needed to add in, like Kevin Storm targeting the limb, and at the same time Washington having to kind of fight back and kind of put the pain in that limb in the back of his mind and on the back burner so he can focus on the subject at hand, which was obviously beating Kevin Storm. And I think that story was kind of played out extremely well. I think they did it, I just think they did it well. I think Kevin Storm utilizing the outside area, like the ring steps and the corners, kind of played into his character that he took from intensity over to severity, like this ground and pound kind of guy, this more vicious side of the spectrum of a main event kind of caliber star. I think that kind of kept that role of his character and that dimension of his persona intact very well. And overall, a fair match, and I think they did well with the time they were given, so 3 stars. We close out the pre-show top conversation, and we start out with the main show, the kickoff match. Match number 1 for the Global Championship. It is Otis Crane defending against Lone Wolf. And out of the way, let's just get this out of the way. Otis Crane, yes, obviously, won. I don't think I need to leave you in much of a limbo for you to understand that. I think it was very clear that he was going to walk into this show and walk out with the championship in both case scenarios. However, this match, I think this match, I'm not really sure on how to kind of go about it, because I think I expected a lot. Despite the fact that Lone Wolf and Otis Crane have not been booked extremely well over the past 6, 7, 8 months, I still know that they are capable of putting on barn murders. And this was a fairly, I can't even say mediocre, and I can't even say serviceable. It was a fairly good match. But I don't know whether to be like very, very lightly disappointed or very, very lightly enthused by it, because I know that they could put on a fantastic match, and the fact that they didn't put on an A++ match, I don't know. The kickoff match is a thing that a lot of people get held with pride. If you're in the mid-card position, you want to have that kickoff match because it shows the showrunners and the bookers that they have faith, or you. It shows you that the showrunners and bookers have faith in you to open up a show and make it mean something. And I think that this match, that did that for a lot of people that maybe don't know exactly what Lone Wolf and Otis Crane are extremely capable of in big fight environments. But for me, knowing exactly what they are capable of and knowing what kind of matches they've had with other performers of other calibers before, I don't know whether to be slightly disappointed or slightly ecstatic about it, So I just gave it a fair 3.5 rating. I think it was more than serviceable. I think it was a really good match. The limb work was done really well. I think Lone Wolf trying to keep Otis Crane grounded, knowing that he's kind of having to fight an uphill battle, and the longer he can keep Otis Crane on the mat and on the ground and keep the offense going while Crane is down, the better. I think the little knickknacks and kind of seams of that match, I think, were done very brilliantly. Um, but I think I was a little underwhelmed that it wasn't what I thought it was going to be. Like, I thought it was going to be this match that nobody thought was going to be worth much, if anything, close to a damn, and yet, tore the roof down. So, since it did do that, I mean, perhaps I just got my hopes up way too much, but I give it a fair 3.5 stars, and I kind of move on from there. After the match, however, Otis Crane picks up the win. Capital then comes down and hits the Capital Punishment on Lone Wolf before raising Otis Crane's hand in victory, as he kind of, looks down at Lone Wolf and then at Capital like, well, I mean, I kind of had that, but okay, thanks. So I think that adds like maybe a small little ripple for Otis Crane and his partnership with the Mobocracy, especially seeing him and his character and his priorities clash with those of Chris Ross and Chris Sanders and Drew Akron and Capital and Mika Jordan, and kind of seeing the changes in ways that they go about their duties. I think this is a nice little starting point for a burn towards Otis Crane kind of separating himself from the Mobocracy. But it also opens up the opportunity for Capital and Lone Wolf to do something going forward. It gives Lone Wolf something to do after this, which is a great sign. It gives Capital something to do now, which is always great because he's a damn great worker. And Otis Crane will continue on with the Global Championship reign. And I think this overall was, after the match, did very well. I think it offered all three involved parties a great point to build upon. So it's really just, the booking that goes into Bulletproof. Where does this, feud now starting up between Lone Wolf and Capital go, and, who becomes the next challenger to the Global Championship? I think we'll definitely have to wait and see, but I'm looking forward to finding out. Second match on the card was Taylor Hell versus Ashley Donovan. This was another match that I thought was going to be pretty overlooked in terms of the overall aspect. I mean, you got Northern Lights and the Promised Land, you got the Steel Purgatory match, you got the World Title match, you get the International Title match. So there are a lot of matches to kind of look forward to on this show. And I think when it comes down to it, there are some matches like Hell versus Donovan that would probably get overlooked in the overall conversation. Nevertheless, Taylor Hell versus Ashley Donovan actually, was a pretty damn good match. I think if there was any match that you would have had follow up Crane versus Lone Wolf, it would probably have to be Taylor Hell versus Ashley Donovan. USW kind of structures their cards where it's like the more underrated matches that are capable of a lot more than a lot of people are willing to give it credit for or willing to give it hope in. We'll kind of start out the card, and then the title matches will get involved, and then they'll get to the main event kind of picture. So this would obviously most definitely end up following Crane versus Lone Wolf. So in this position, you have the clashing characters of Ashley Donovan having this, I don't know, this kind of like a brilliance to her. Like, she has a leg up on everyone. It makes sense. And then it clashes with Taylor Hell, who is like this vile and vicious competitor, somebody that will pull your hair down and take you to the canvas and then continue pulling you by your hair across the canvas and out of the ring and up the ramp. So obviously you have two very, very, very battling aspects of characters, and this match I think was also really good. I think it was really good. Ashley Donovan and Taylor Hell both had something to offer. Taylor Hell, the small things like utilizing the 5 count to her advantage, breaking it off at 4.7, 4.8, 4.9. Ashley Donovan ended up getting a pinfall after 2 signature attempts, and Taylor Hell just kicking out at 2.8 was a huge deal, I think. It added a lot more suspense to the match, and the 3 minutes that followed past that built off of that and were better helped by that. And then the other smaller things like Ashley Donovan going for the knee strike to Taylor Hell in the corner, and Taylor Hell just dropping off of the apron, and Ashley Donovan just eating shit going into the turnbuckle, and then just I mean, the camera was kind of flimsy in terms of like it was very like back and forth, kind of jittery. But she essentially ran into the corner, bashed her knee, and hopped over the turnbuckle at an angle, and then just skid down the ringside steps and into the barricade. It looked kind of vicious with the camera work, but then again, the camera work was not too stable, so we couldn't really get a good picture. But from what the picture showed, it looked pretty vicious. But she completely ate shit on that, and it was, not gonna lie, enjoyable to see her struggle to get back into the match. But once she started getting back into the match, and then of course hitting the signatures, I forgot to mention at the start that she hit the two signatures because the first one she didn't feel like she got all of it because of the injured knee, and then the second she got and hit, hoping that it would at least equal up to one or one full signature or 1.5 of a signature and go for a pinfall. It still wasn't enough. Taylor Hell would eventually hit the Hellraiser for the clean pinfall victory over Ashley Donovan, and this would not be the final time that we would see Taylor Hell within the night. I think Ashley Donovan, this feud will definitely benefit her. I think she will now continue on to a feud with maybe Natalie Dawson or Margot Silva or whomever else, maybe Regina or Valiance. I've heard that she's expected to kind of make her way up. Penny Brighton, perhaps. I don't know. She'll do something from here on out, and I think she'll take this feud with whatever momentum she's had and kind of take it into another feud where she can utilize the same structure. And Taylor Hell gets a huge boost in momentum. I think this win is huge, especially for what happens later on in the night. And I think it was a really good match that offered a lot more than you would have thought you would have gotten by the time the closing bell rings. So 3.5 to that as well, just primarily because it was more of a slower paced match than I would have really hoped for. But the more methodical pace to it kind of benefited it in a way, especially with the characters that were involved. But it's not really my I don't want to say je ne sais quoi because I'm probably wrong. I'm probably using the wrong terminology for it, but it's not really my kind of choice. Not my cup of tea. I guess I'm losing my train of thought. We'll get into the next interview now, which is the Mobocracy. Chris Sanders, Drew Akron, and Chris Ross talking about tonight and about the Steel Purgatory match, stating how bodies will be broken, careers will be altered, paths will be switched around, lives will be changed, and I think pretty much the overall aspect of the case was this just a build up to how dangerous the Steel Purgatory is and how excruciating it can be to even step between the doors of the Steel Purgatory. So with that, we then lead into the actual statement, which is that Mobocracy claims to have a new leash on life post Steel Purgatory match. So I guess with a win, they feel like they'll be gaining back a lot of momentum that they've been losing and possibly get to where they've been intending to get to this entire year or so, which makes sense. We get into the fourth match on the card directly after that. We get into the third match on the card directly after that. It's the World Tag Team Championship match between Jack Ramsey and Austin Cole, the defending champions, against the Ring Men, Ty Jackson and Thomas Bennett. This was a good match. I think it was. I think it gave me less than I had hoped for in a Jack Ramsey and Austin Cole tag team match, especially a Jack Ramsey and Austin Cole tag team championship match. But with that, it's kind of like you see a lot more growth within both parties. The Ring Men obviously having this kind of like this new attitude, gotta hop on every single opportunity we get, and Jack Ramsey and Austin Cole, on the other hand, finding a way to kind of cut down on that tempo and bring back to their regular technical wrestling favor or preference, I guess, which is fine, but at the same time, it didn't give me much more than that. it showed the ringmen to be very hungry and wanting to jump on the opportunities. But aside from that, you got the same thing that Ramsey and Cole usually do. They tend to break down their opponents, keep them in whatever advantage or whatever gives the advantage to Ramsey and Cole at that moment. They'll keep them in that position, and not much else was kind of gained from it. It was a technical match. I think that the tempo when the ringmen were involved was kind of higher up, and it was a nice little breakaway from that when Ramsey and Cole got the upper hand. But it kind of seemed like if you were to have a World Tag Team Championship match on Friday Night Severity. This doesn't seem like a pay-per-view Tag Team Championship match, and this doesn't feel, as I said, like a Jack Ramsey and Austin Cole Tag Team Championship match. So 3.5 stars, because it still was a good match. It still was serviceable. It's just it let me down because of how much I've been exposed to the greatness that is Jack Ramsey and Austin Cole's technical prowess as a tag team in big-time matches like these. Rolling on from that into the fourth match on the card for the International Championship, I kind of got scared that this match was so high on the card, but it kind of made sense to an extent later on. It was Verse 9 versus Paulo Orlando, and I would assume was probably the biggest shocker of the night. Everybody really expected Paulo Orlando to walk out as the new international champion, and obviously I kind of spoiled it because he didn't. Verse 9 ended up beating Paulo Orlando to retain the USW International Championship in what was, again, a good match. I think it was different from what I was expecting. Paulo Orlando is a very up-tempo kind of guy, and Verse 9 is kind of like a get on the chances when you have the opportunity to kind of guy, and that always oftentimes leads to a higher tempo match. Paulo Orlando is also a high flyer kind of guy, and Verse 9 is a more physically demanding kind of performer, so it would make sense for this to be a faster paced kind of match. And it was, but it was more ground and pound and technical wrestling than I thought it was going to be, which I'm not opposed to, because I like the fact that it exposes us to see what Paulo Orlando can do outside of the flippy shit realm and outside of the aerial attack offensive kind of scheme. It kind of shows a lot of versatility within himself. And it also kind of brings the match into an environment that Verse 9 is used to, which gives him an advantage, which is a good thing since he is the champion, and which is also a good thing since that is what you want in a match like this, an advantage. So I honestly cannot complain much about it. It's just, I think that in the moment, I mean, if I were to look at the match again, I'd probably have a different take on it, but since I've watched it once, and I've seen it once, and I've seen what it offered me, I think the fact that I was so caught off guard by what it offered and how it offered it up, I think that kind of took me out of the match a little bit, and it took me out of my wrestling scouting mindset and out of my wrestling reviewer and discussion kind of mindset, and more into this kind of like, what is happening, like a more of a moderator or a more of a spectator kind of thing. Moderator was not a great term, but it put me into a more of a spectator kind of role, which was different and not really beneficial in times like these, but nevertheless gave me an insight into the kind of things like Paulo Orlando having to kind of work ground for or pound for pound with Verse 9 on the ground and in headlocks and in waist locks and in abdominal stretches. He had to kind of hold his own, and the great thing was that Verse 9 didn't even really need to like cut down on Paulo Orlando's legs or midsection to be able to do it. It wasn't like limb work was done to ensure that Paulo Orlando couldn't take to the sky. He just chose not to. I think eventually, once he started getting the upper hand with Verse 9 about halfway into the match, he kind of saw that he can kind of get done with it. I mean, he obviously went for a few springboards. There was a springboard back elbow. There was a Canadian destroyer from the second rope, which looked vicious. But aside from that, there was little Paulo Orlando signature high aerial offense, which was different, and I'm not opposed to it. I just think it took me out of the mindset. So with Paul Orlando in verse 9, while I would like to see this match again so I can get a different outlook on it, I am going to give it 3.5 stars because it didn't go the way I thought it was going to, which didn't do me favors when I was kind of thrown off by the fact that it was so different from what I thought it was going to be. Like, I'm fine with it being different, and I'm fine with it branching off from what it usually tends to do, but when it throws me for such a loop that I'm taken out of the mindset of having to dissect the match and having to now kind of look at the match and sort of, like, wonder what the hell is going on, that's, I mean, it's a plus for a wrestler, but at the same time, if you want never mind. 3.5 stars, you get the point. We go right from that into verse 9 celebration. Obviously, he hit the music theory and went to go help Paul Orlando to his feet, and Paul Orlando kind of brushed off his hand, picked himself up with a middle rope, and said, "Hey, listen, I will be back." And left the ring. So it gave us more room for us to be able to see another match between Paul Orlando and verse 9. So it left the door open for that opportunity. I don't know whether that's going to happen at Bulletproof or whether it's going to happen at Aftershock or Insanity or sometime at Call of Greatness. I have no clue. But, what I do know is the fact that it left the door open enough for that to be a possibility, which I'm very pleased with, because I would like to see this match again. Fifth match on the card was for the World's Women's Championship. It was the three-way dance between Aphrodite, the champion, Natalie Dawson, and Margot Silva. Natalie Dawson was not the champion. Aphrodite was the champion. This was a good match. I think it was much more hectic than I thought it was going to be. Natalie Dawson and Margot Silva seemed too fond of kicking each other's asses. I think that the whole idea of utilizing the numbers game kind of got thrown out the window 3 minutes in when they went in for a lockup and kind of said, what, screw it. I'm either going to turn on you or you're going to turn on me, and let's just ensure that neither of us has an opportunity to do that. Collar and elbow tie-up, and it was just like none of them were on any sort of side. It was like Natalie Dawson, Margot Silva, and Aphrodite were all fighting for their own, fighting for themselves rather than fighting for a bigger cause. They were fighting to become the sole World's Women's Champion, which is great. It wasn't until late into the match, and by late I mean like the final stages of the match, where Natalie Dawson and Margot Silva started trying to work together. Aphrodite started firing back. She started going to work on Margot Silva. Noticed out of the corner of her eye, Natalie Dawson setting up for something. She kind of ducked out of the way, and Natalie Dawson hit Margot Silva with a running shot kick, which allowed Aphrodite the opportunity to hit the solar eclipse on Natalie Dawson for the clean pinfall victory to retain the World's Women's Championship. I'm very glad that this was the outcome of the match. I'm very happy that Aphrodite finally kind of closed off this chapter, and I'm glad that it offered more room for Natalie Dawson and Margot Silva to either grow within their partnership or to just completely go away with it, or just completely just turn on each other, which would be an interesting aspect to the whole conversation in its entirety. But then we're not done with that, because as Aphrodite is going to celebrate, she gets completely cracked over the top of the skull by Taylor Hell with the World's Women's Championship. Taylor Hell just smacks Aphrodite with the championship. I'll be right back. I don't listen sometimes. So Taylor Hell cracks Aphrodite over the top of the skull with the World's Women's Championship, and then continues to pummel her with the hand. She has a ring on her hand, which she's kind of utilized now. Just keeps bludgeoning her over the top of the head, takes the title belt, keeps smashing Aphrodite over the head with the title belt, pretty much trying to, I guess, fracture her skull, if anything. But Aphrodite starts bleeding, and I mean bleeding as in it looks like a laceration. And Taylor Hell just starts smearing her hand over Aphrodite's head, and then just starts rubbing the blood on her chest, and then taking the blood and then rubbing it on the center plate of the World's Women's Championship, which is just brutal and vicious, and it's beautiful, and it's awesome. Jesus Christ. I mean, if there's any kind of feud that I would be fine, let me make this very clear into the goddamn camera itself. If there's any feud that I would be fucking fantastically, perfectly fine with Aphrodite now losing the championship to, it would be Taylor Hell. I wasn't on board until I saw this. Taylor Hell was just using her vicious nature to win matches. Now she's using it. She's gone 100% into the deep end with it, and I love it. It's fantastic. It's amazing. I love it so much. And I have nothing but great things to say about this feud now, because this is now a feud. You know, we've seen sometimes where performers will take the blood of their opponent and just smear it over their chest, but for them to take the blood of their opponent and then wipe it on the center, on the championship belt itself, just shows how much the championship means to both of them. Knows what they're willing to go through for the championship, and sees that this championship is just as much a part of this feud as the two of them are. So now I'm fully fledged behind it. So Taylor Hell versus Aphrodite at Bulletproof fucking 11 in Baltimore for the World's Women's Championship. I'm 100% on board with that. God, I could salivate at the idea of that. That's just a fantastic match. I'm now looking forward to that more than anything. So we go from there, we jump directly into match 6. That is Quincy Newsome and Morbid against Hell on Earth, which I just realized Hell on Earth, if you wanted to abbreviate, that would be HOE. So they're doomed from the start because their goddamn abbreviation was HO. God fucking damn you. Quincy Newsome and Morbid beat Ash and Indigo Child. Double XL tried to get involved late in the match. It backfired. Indigo Child got blindsided by it. Indigo Child then ate a tombstone pile driver. Ash was then left in the ring. Quincy Newsome hit the trophy hunter on him, which allowed Morbid to hit a choke slam on Ash and then pin him for the victory. So Morbid did not beat Ash with the pile driver. Rather, he beat Ash with the choke slam. That's I don't know how to feel about that. Signature maneuvers are not usually ones meant to win matches. So when they do, it kind of makes the opponent look weak. But I said in my severity in a nutshell this past Friday, technically yesterday, that I thought this was going to be like the start of the end for Hell on Earth. I think it's fucking over now. I think that Hell on Earth is completely done with. I don't think you have them lose this match to Morbid and Quincy Newsome, not only in that fashion, but for Ash to get completely dismantled at the end of it by Morbid and lose with the choke slam. Not even having Morbid declare Ash worthy enough of losing to the pile driver. That signifies only bad things. So if they do keep this stable together, it's only going to be held together by toothpaste and rubber bands. It's not looking pretty. This Hell on Earth is going to die a very, very quick and painful death over the next couple of weeks. I can only imagine. So this feud is over with. Sorry. So this feud is over with, obviously. We go from that match into an interview with Paul Orlando and Anna Walczyk. She pretty much asks Paul Orlando what goes next and what happened with the altercation at the end of the match, which Paul Orlando just simply said, hey, I told Verse 9 I don't need your help getting up. I don't need your help getting to this point in time. And I certainly don't need your help to kick your ass again at a future point in time. Pretty much vows to face Verse 9 again for the title, with the title on the line. Offering, again, keeping that door wide open, which I'm a big fan of. Also, the Quincy Newsome and Morbid versus Hell on Earth match, 3.25 stars. And Aphrodite, Natalie Dawson and Margot Silva, 3.75 stars. That was the hectic match that I was fine with. And Verse 9 versus Paul Orlando was 3.5 stars. We go from that to the 7th match on the card, which was for the World Heavyweight Championship. Eli Kaner defended the title against Alexander Rotten, and Alexander Rotten treated Eli Kaner like he was a motherfucking ragdoll this entire goddamn match. The poor bastard. It was just from one position to another. It was just, he got chucked into the corner, chucked over the top rope, chucked over the goddamn commentary table, chucked over the goddamn barricade. They fought into the goddamn crowd before Alexander Rotten had to rush back to ringside and break the count because they almost got accidentally counted out. It wasn't until like the final 4 or 5 minutes of the match where Eli Kaner finally got something done. He then hit the rough shot out of absolutely nowhere for the victory. So Eli Kaner just pretty much buries Alexander Rotten and everything that he had done in the match for no reason. Poor fucking Rotten, man. I just can't. I feel bad for him now. It's just, he doesn't deserve this. Eli Kaner retains the World Heavyweight Championship. Alexander Rotten, I don't know what the fuck he does now. He's kind of in this program now with Maj Shigeto where they've got this mystery angle going on right now. I can only imagine it's continuing the slow burn towards the Severity Takeover storyline that we've been, I guess the seeds have been planted for since the summertime. But after the match is the bigger thing that we have to kind of talk about, which is Crimson Red comes to the top of the ramp and signifies that he is going to be next in line to face Eli Kaner for the World Heavyweight Championship. So we are going to get Eli Kaner versus Crimson Red for the World Heavyweight Championship at Bulletproof 11, which I'm completely and utterly on board for. I think if anybody were to bring out the best in Eli Kaner and kind of set his character on the straight and narrow, it would probably be Crimson Red. And I'm definitely a fan of Crimson Red versus Eli Kaner more than I am Alexander Rotten versus Eli Kaner. Again, poor Rotten. Afterwards, we get into the 8th match, and god damn it, I wondered, I mean, by the time I got to the end of the match, I was like, oh, or I'm sorry, to the end of the main event, I was like, oh, maybe there's a reason why this match wasn't the main, or the match prior wasn't the main event. But then I realized that this match was absolutely the one that should have been the main event. It was the New Northern Lights versus the Promised Land. I don't think anybody can deny. I'm really upset now that they did not close off the match. And by the time, when we get to the main event, by the time I thought that the main event was over, I thought there was a reason as to why the main event was what the main event was. But it wasn't. The New Northern Lights versus Promised Land should have been the main event. Would have been the main event. Also, Rotten versus Kaner was 3.5 stars. And absolutely, if I was booking the show, I would have done everything the same. And if I had to keep everything in order, I would have just changed up the ending of the show. And if I could change the point of one match, I would change this match and the main event. This was a hectic brawl. This was no disqualification. May make this very clear. New Northern Lights and Promised Land just battled everywhere. They took seating from the crowd and beat each other down with it. They tried to break the already installed seating within the area, which was fun and also costly. They went through commentary tables, they went through the barricade, they went through a panel on the goddamn stage itself, and the closer of the match was Samuel North locking in Suzuki Kirakashi into a sharpshooter, and Tanner Wallace being locked into a crossface from Blaine North. Tanner Wallace would pass out before Suzuki Kirakashi would raise the middle finger to both of them and pass out. And so the referee ends up calling off the match. The New Northern Lights win via double referee stoppage as double pass out occurs, where Suzuki Kirakashi and Tanner Wallace pass out to the pain of the submission holds that were being applied at that moment in time. New Northern Lights help each other to their feet. The crowd pops, it's a standing ovation. The storyline was done perfectly well. This is the beautiful conclusion and send-off of the Promised Land, the original Promised Land story and saga. Definitely, probably one of the things we'll look back on the year and we'll go, this was absolutely one of the biggest high points of USW's year. This was just done beautifully and perfectly and executed amazingly. From the slow burn of Wallace and Kirakashi not even really liking the fact that Samuel North was involved in the group to begin with, and then kind of like the the success and the reason why they even kept the New Northern Lights in the group to begin with for that long was because they were in the tag team title picture and they offered them success. And once they lost the titles and they kind of fell out of that picture, they were no longer worth a damn, and Kirikashi and Wallace just kind of sent them out. So, yeah, comeuppance. Fucking revenge. And now it comes full circle. Because they stated at the time that at the very beginning of the Promised Land, when it was just Blaine North, Tanner Wallace, and Suzuki Kirikashi, that if you're on the road to the Promised Land, you're on the fast track to the Promised Land, you face no repercussions for any of the actions because you're the only one that is in the right at all times. And now that is absolutely put to bed. It is put to rest as false. And the story just comes full circle. So a year and a half plus in the making. Just, man, I love it. Wonderful. I think it was fantastic. And I think it was worth every penny you could pour into the storyline. The fans on their feet as the New Northern Lights are brought to their feet, and Kirikashi and Wallace are helped, half unconscious and half dazed and confused, up the ramp. Was just, it poured in such a feeling of emotions that you don't tend to have in a lot of different wrestling storylines, and this one you did. So it was great to soak it up and to enjoy it, because you don't get to see this very often, and for you to see it at Brimstone was a very nice touch. So we officially close out a saga of the Promised Land, which I think was done 100% to a T. I think it was probably one of the best decisions USW has made booking-wise since their inception into 2013. I think they hit the nail on the head perfectly there. I think the year and a half run of the Promised Land and its success, the International Championship, the World Tag Team Championships, the contention for the World Heavyweight Championships and the Global Championships, the fact that everybody had a role to play in the group itself, and the fact that it never ran its course into the dirt, it's a thing we'll look back on very well. And I think this iteration of the Promised Land, which I guess the rumor is that the Promised Land will continue on, this iteration of the Promised Land finally comes to a head, comes to a close, and the good guys win. It's a feel-good kind of story. 4.5 stars for the match. It was just hectic. The one thing that I kind of hated, though, was the fact that it was hard to kind of keep up. You can throw people through the stage, you can try to break property, barricades and commentary tables, but if I can't really follow along with it, I don't really get much from it. So we go from that into a small interview before the main event, with the ringmen vowing to not go away that easily. So it shows, I guess, a valiant aside to them, the fact that they will not just call it quits because they fail once, or they fall once. They will learn from their mistakes, which is, alright, cool. I can get behind that. Main event time, Steel Purgatory match. I'm getting tired. It's 2:30 in the morning. Gotta close this one off soon. My fucking phone's gonna die no matter what. It is the main event. It is the Steel Purgatory match between the Mobocracy and the God Complex. This was just hell. The Steel Purgatory is now like a kind of Hell in a Cell with a mesh steel outside area. So it's like if the Elimination Chamber was everything without the pods. It was just a chamber and steel grate floors. That's what that was. But it was treated under TNA lockdown match rules, lockdown cage match rules. Close of the match came off with Chris Ross and Drew Akron being taken out of the equation by Ophion and Artemis. One was taken off of the side of the cell, I guess, or off the side of the Purgatory and into the steel mesh, while another saw, I think it was Artemis, who hit a huge elbow drop on Drew Akron through the steel mesh and onto the floor below. Allowing for Octavian to lock in a sleeper hold on Chris Ross, which Chris Ross tapped out to, giving the God Complex the victory over the Mobocracy. And then at the end of the match, this is where I kind of thought one or the other could happen. The members of the Mobocracy, so Capital, Mika Jordan, Otis Crane, I think that was about it, came down and, along with Aphrodite, helped out the God Complex to their feet. The Mobocracy helped out the Mobocracy. God Complex helped the God Complex to their feet, and also the God Complex and Mobocracy helped out the Mobocracy and the God Complex to their feet. So it was a real sign of respect. Every performer in the match was bloodied. Blood stained the goddamn chain link. Blood stained the canvas. It was gruesome. It was hellacious. It was, you could see the pain on everyone's faces. It was eye-opening and huge. And I think this is something that we look back on now, and I think in a couple of years' time we'll go, yeah, that was definitely one of the more overlooked cases of hellacious matches in USW. It was just, it brought everything to the table. And then they all kind of stood there on the same page and just raised their arms up. God Complex raised up their arms in one side of the ring and the Mobocracy in the other. And just when you'd think that the Mobocracy, after stating they would change and they would have a change of pace, would turn around and then lay into the God Complex and just beat the shit out of them, take them out of the equation, and officially plant themselves down, their flag in the ground, their knees, their feet to the goddamn turf, as this new era and wave of dominance on Severity. They just let the show go off on a happy note, and I'm not gonna complain about it. I'm not gonna say that, oh, happy endings. I'm not. I don't like Disney. I don't like the warm weather. I don't like good people a lot of times. But I'm not against happy endings. I just feel like it would have served more of an emphatic end to Brimstone had the Mobocracy had that turn, had that change of pace. And I think it would have gotten a huge reaction. I think a lot of people would have cared about the Mobocracy. So I think it's a misstep or a missed opportunity, but I don't think it takes away from the overall show. I think the happy ending, can serve a lot of fans well. I think it's a split 50-50 as to whether you like the decision or not, but I give it a 4.75 star to the match. I can't give matches like these 5 stars just out of principle. I can't give any match that has some special stipulation a perfect rating, because in my opinion, if the match itself, or if the program itself needed the Steel Purgatory or a specialty match as another level but couldn't get the job done as a 5-star match on the single level, it would take the world and back to get me to offer the specialty match as a 5-star match. So that's just my take on it. So 4.75 stars out of principle. Could have very well been a 5-star match, and as a matter of fact, a lot of people will say it was a 5-star match. I just can't say it off of principle. But God Complex beat the Mobocracy. I don't know what the Mobocracy does from now. Maybe a new leash on life, as they said, or maybe a new kind of leaf, turning a new leaf. But the God Complex will use that momentum. They will continue onwards. Aphrodite will face Taylor Hell at Bulletproof. Octavian will most likely go out on his own kind of singles run while remaining with the God Complex, kind of form his own identity. And Artemis and Ophion have already started this tag team identity over the past couple of weeks. So I'm definitely looking into it. So, yeah, really enjoyable show. I think for Brimstone, I would give it a 4-star rating, maybe a 4-star, maybe 4.25 star match. So maybe a 4.25 star rating. But I think a 4-star rating is good for me. It offered a lot. Its card was fantastic. It was stacked. I think it did well in most cases. I don't think there was any real low point. And not much else is to say other than we are now fully on the track, the frontal course, the straight and narrow towards Bulletproof 11 on both brands. So with that being said, thank you for watching. If you have any thoughts and opinions on the show, leave them and sound off in the comments down below. I will get to you as quickly as possible. And with that, I hope you enjoyed. Find me on Twitter at ZACHARYSERRA. You can find me on Instagram at THEZACKHARDY. Remember to like, comment, and subscribe for more. I'm Zach Hardy. I'm signing off.